Okay, today I'm on Jekyll Island. I'm down here by, this is the shell of the Horton House. It was built in 1736 by William Horton. And it also was burned in 1742 by the Spanish, rebuilt from 1742 to 1743. The following owners of Horton House: William Horton and his heirs from 1736 to 1768. Clement Martin and his heirs from 1768 to 1784. Richard Leakes from 1784 to 1792, Christopher DeBinion and his heirs from 1792 to 1886, the Jekyll Island Club from 1886 to 1947. This house was 2 stories. You could tell on the inside when I show you in there. This land was given, 50 acres was given to William Horton by James Oglethorpe, because William Horton was Oglethorpe's right-hand man and was in commander of Fort Frederica when Oglethorpe left to go back to England. Okay, the original Horton House was built in 1736 by William Horton. It was made of wood, and it was burned down in 1742 by the Spanish during the War of Jenkins' Ear. As the Spanish retreated, they came over here and burned the house down. So William Horton built a new house made out of tabby, and that's what it's made of today. And it stayed here for a long time, to the 1850s, where it was deserted. It tells 2 stories. There's the bottom story and the top story up there. Plenty of windows because they didn't have electricity then, so they rely on sunlight. It also served as the Georgia military command, because William Horton was the second in charge. Oglethorpe was first, and then William Horton was second. But in the early 20th century, they had the millionaires had to fix it. They had to put concrete, and you see the bricks. They had to patch it because there was a lot of holes in it over time because it was dilapidated. It was deserted in the 1850s. You can see the tabby up there. This is the second floor. You see where the floors were, the bottom floor. You can see the ridge where the second floor was. And there's a doorway to another room. There was both fireplaces at both ends. You can still see the remnant of the fireplace here. And their house is a lot smaller back then. You can see the tabby in the wall there. You see the fireplace on this has been removed, I guess, over time. It just dilapidated. But you can see the tabby really good out there. The dowel rods in there they used. That's the original tabby from the house built in 1742 by William Horton. But windows everywhere. The top floor was, of course, the quarters. Okay, I'm about to show you the other side of the Horton House. You could tell for that time it was huge, but now by today's standards, just a mid-sized house. Look how small the back door is. See, this is the back of the Horton House. It almost looks like the front, but it's different because of the door is smaller. That's the only difference. Almost the shell of the house is basically just a big rectangle. And the same amount of windows, and the door kind of like a shotgun door. Also, these are some of the tabby pieces left over from the buildings over here during the, also because Horton had buildings out here and all kinds of different things, not just the house. He also had buildings because he had 50 acres he was cultivating. And this is some of the tabby that was left over from his buildings. Basically, this is just rubble from the buildings. You can see how square it is. You can see the shell in there. This stuff lasted. The tabby lasted. You can see a piece there, and this one's, you could tell that's a corner of a building right there. Got more tabby over here, the other pieces, and pieces over here. Like I said, he had buildings all over here, probably for his grain, because he had a plantation, and he had corn was his main product here, so he had to have storehouses. Horton came over, Simon, a tiny fleet from Gravesend, England. They were sent to St. Simon's on October 20th, 1735. Oglethorpe's second trip to Georgia. He came to Georgia 3 years earlier to establish Georgia. John and Charles Wesley also came on that voyage to Simon, and they reached Georgia in Savannah February 6, 1736. Their destination was St. Simon's there, but they had to go to Savannah first and then take another boat to St. Simon. February 14th, Horton got on the sloop called Midnight, and by February 15th he was on St. Simon's Island, 1736. In April of 1736, Oglethorpe granted William Horton, granted 500 acres over here on Jekyll Island to cultivate and to have as a home. Jekyll Island, as we know, is named after Sir Joseph Jekyll, which encouraged the expedition to Georgia and in this area. They were bringing Horton over here to bring him over to Jekyll Island to come visit his home. And when he was coming over here, they usually fired a cannon to warn people they were coming, so they know they were coming. But the young man that fired the cannon, he fired it several times. It blew up. The cannon blew up on him, and Horton had to turn around and take him back to St. Simon's. He was operated on, but he passed away from the damage. Horton had people over here, a lot of forced laborers, to cultivate Jekyll Island. Basically, you got to think 500 acres, but not all of it was cultivated. It was about 50 acres in the end. They fenced off and used for their gardens and stuff like that. So this ended up being a plantation. Horton had a plantation over here with forced laborers, and also served as a messenger to the Spanish in St. Augustine. He went to St. John's River trying to find a Spanish outpost, but couldn't find any because the British were patrolling St. John's River to see what the Spanish weakness was, and there was nobody there at the Spanish outpost. So he walked 40 miles from the St. John's River area to St. Augustine to speak to the Spanish governor. Oglethorpe had to go back to England to get reinforcements and supplies because he knew the Spanish were coming, so he put William Horton in charge. By the end of 1736, he built a 2-story house on Jekyll Island. This is on the Indian site right here. Is the Indian site that was over 2,000 years old. And this is the side of, if you notice, this is the one side of the Horton house that don't have windows. The other side is exactly like it. Okay, the first house that William Horton built in 1736 was wooden. Had a parlor, a hall, a main floor. Each end had a chimney and a fireplace. And for cooking and heating, upstairs was sleeping quarters. Had a front porch, an upstairs balcony faced north, which the balcony was up here on the wooden house, not this one. William Horton had a plantation over. His main crop was corn and cattle. So they had this big area was growing corn and had cattle, but they found out you couldn't cultivate too much over here, so they gave up on it. February 2nd, 1738, Lieutenant Delagal, which is Delagal's fort, come visit him over here and had a great dinner. Horton sent his son Thomas Horton in August of 1743 to be educated in South Carolina. New Horton House, which I'm staying in right now, was finished in 1743, built on the same foundation as the original. It was 2 stories, 2 chimneys, one on each end. You see the remnants of a fireplace there and a fireplace on this side. This time he was smart and made it out of tabby, so it'll last longer. Horton's also the one that published the official declaration of war on Spain at Fort Frederico in July of 1742. Major Horton, William Horton, which he moved up from the ranks from ensign to major, died in 1749. After Horton's death, a small garrison of troops occupied Jekyll Island to control it, commanded by Lieutenant Paul Demery in June of 1749 to September of 1750. Then it was given to Captain Raymond Demery, his son, after that. That's when Jekyll Island became an official military post, when the Demerys came over and took over. Raymond Demery lived here in the Horton House, and they changed Jekyll Creek's name to Demery Creek, which is right over that way. Raymond Demery was granted Horton's 500 acres plus 600 more acres for cattle, so that's basically most of the island. Raymond Demery stayed on Jekyll until he died in 1766. Probably lived in the same house right here. Martin was the next person to own the Horton House. He got 600 acres in 1768. Martin wanted to own the whole island. They wouldn't give Martin the whole island. They gave Thomas Horton, his son, 500 acres that he eventually gave to his dad, William Horton. But in agreement with Thomas Horton, Martin got the whole island by April 5th, 1768. Clement Martin died March 11th, 1775. Left Jekyll to his son, John, and his daughter, Jane and Anne Martin. 1784, Jekyll confiscated by the Americans during the Revolutionary War, and the Martins were banished from Georgia. 1784, Jekyll was sold by the sheriff to settle a debt of 34 pounds and 6 shillings, and it was sold at auction because of the Martins. Bought for 500 pounds by Richard Leake, who married Clement Martin's daughter. Richard Leake was also a surgeon and a planter. Leake didn't really live here in the Horton House. He used the island as grazed livestock, but he lived in Savannah. 1791, Leake sold Jekyll Island. Leake sold Jekyll Island to Francis Valvey for £200 to fund a small colony for French immigrants, which started the ownership of the Dominions later on. February 5th, 1791, Dumasse bought Jekyll Island from the Leakes, he was French. Okay, Dumasse couldn't pay the property tax because he overextended himself financially. So the Chatham County tax collector came and sold Horton House April 17th, 1792 to Nicholas Villehot. He bought it at auction. Villehot turned around and conveyed Jekyll Island into portions. Dominion got a portion. Christophe got a portion. Dominion got a 1/4. Chapelaine got a 4th, and Dumasse got a 4th. So the plan worked out for him after all. Dominion agreed to buy all of Jekyll Island May 22nd, 1792. This is the first time the Dominions bought Jekyll Island. The original deed that Villehot had was lost at sea because the ship was attacked and everything was thrown overboard. June 14, 1794, Dominion agreed to exchange his portion of Sapelo Island for 2/4 of Jekyll, belonging to Dumasse and Chapelaine. Villehot and Chapelaine died. Dumasse died as well. So Dominion went to Glen County Superior Court with 2 witnesses that saw him buy it, but Dominion buy his part, and he ended up getting the whole island. Dominion bought Jekyll Island on October 14th, 1800, but he only owned a 4th of it from. He bought another 4th of from Grand Claus Mesley for $2,142.85. In the 1800s, Christophe Dominion owned Jekyll Island, which that's the first Dominion, Christophe Dominion. Dominion moved into the Horton House right here and farmed the land. Dominion had a sloop called Anubis, which he traded with Brunswick and Savannah. He owned 5,000 to 6,000 acres of Jekyll Island, which is all of it. And once he tried to sell Jekyll Island on November 16, 1819, but nobody wanted to buy it. Christophe left his Jekyll Island to his son Henry. During the War of 1812, the British raided Jekyll Island and St. Simon's as well and plundered Dominion's house, which was the Horton House. Christophe Dominion died in 1825. Henry moved Annabelle Amelia Henry Dominion, which was Christophe's son, married Anne Amelia Nicholas. Henry involved in Brunswick business and also was the commissioner of Glen Academy and the justice of Inferior Court. Henry Dominion also liked to race boats. He had a boat called the Goddess of Liberty, and Sarah and Catherine named after his daughter. So he had 3 boats, one named Goddess of Liberty, Sarah, and Catherine, which was named after his daughters. And Dominion, May 4th, 1850, his wife, Henry Dominion's wife, Anne Dominion, died May 4th, 1850. And they had a parade of boats down the Brunswick River, which her casket was on the first boat, but the rest of the boats were singing hymns in her honor of her death. It was a big deal. He did a good deal, but he never married his mistress. He had a mistress also, but he never married her. Henry Dominion died November 7, 1866 at the age of 79, so he lived a long time. Henry deeded Jekyll Island to Charles and John Cooper Dominion and his daughter Elijah. Both boys got over 1,000 acres each, but Elisha only got 30 acres. Henry Dominion didn't marry his mistress Sarah Osk in 1852, but wed her daughter Mary Ost, which is weird. He had 5 kids with Mary Ost. Henry Dominion died December 7th, 1866 at 79. His 2 sons, John Cooper Dominion and Henry Charles Dominion, ran the plantation. 1863, deeded while still alive to his sons because the Civil War was going on and he didn't want to lose it. So his sons were deeded, John Cooper Dominion and Henry Charles Dominion. November 23rd, 1856, Henry and John Dominion posted in the Savannah Daily Morning News, no trespassing on Jekyll Island. They didn't want nobody coming on their island. When the Wanderer went on Jekyll Island, the south end of Jekyll Island, the Dominion sent doctors to go help them, but they also was part of the trade too, and they got in trouble. They got indicted, but the other son didn't, because he wouldn't had no part of it. Wanderer was illegal because it was after the end of slavery, and it was done secretly. The Binions were Henry was not indicted, but John Cooper and Henry Charles were indicted because they were part of the Wanderer situation. The Binions and everybody moved to Brunswick. Brunswick was basically deserted, all of it. Dominion returned to Jekyll after the Civil War, sold to John Eugene Dominion, John Cooper's nephew, which sold Jekyll Island to the Jekyll Island Club. John Cooper, Dominion, stayed on the island. He was allowed to stay on the island in agreement selling his land to the Jekyll Island Club. He was allowed to stay in a field, a house just north of Wiley Road. 1895, Jekyll Island Club restored and fixed up the shell of the Horton House, and it was finished May 1898. So this is what they did. They fixed I showed you on the inside what the brick was and everything. During the Civil War, February 10th, 1862, the Confederates fortified Jekyll Island, had a fort over there by the airport. March 10th, 1862, they deserted St. Simons and Jekyll and Brunswick and went to Savannah, the Confederates. But eventually the Jekyll Island Club took over, and then the state of Georgia took over after that, and that's what you see today.